Greetings. In this intro to my website, I want to divide it into 3 sections. In the first section, I want to just simply give an overview of the material that's there, because some of you just want to get right into the material and you'll decide what you think of it as you're reading it. The second thing I do want to hit on is my motivation, particularly why I'm giving it all away for free. And then the third section will be on who I am, because there are some of you who will want to know my academic credentials or other things about my journey to decide if you want to read my material and to get an idea where I'm coming from. That's important to some people. Other people, it's not that important. So that's what we're going to do, so let's get started. My writings are in 2 primary groups. Much of what I've written is directed at Christians, but some of what I've written is directed at non-Christians. The difference between an ebook and an article is the length, so some of these may actually be ebooks that I have. No Tithe for the Christian is an ebook that states the conclusion in the introduction. In that I have a tithe test which people have taken, and you can put your results online. But I have some spin-off articles from that one. One's called The Christian's Money and the Bible. Another is Cash Compliance for the Christian and the Bible. Another is a 1-page article said, 4 urgent questions for those who teach Christians are to tithe today. You can give that to a pastor or anybody who teaches this thing and see what kind of response you get. And then the last one I had is Who Tithed in the Bible. Now this was a couple from Australia, I believe, that sent me a document that talked about those who tithed, and I expanded on that and really went through it, and that is a very interesting document of who actually tithed in the Bible. My whole point of all this is that I want you to keep your cash and put it where God would have you put it. Another ebook I have is called Death in the Bible. In that one, I address all the longevity models, whether held by evolutionists or Bible people that believe in longevity models, which means billions of years. I have a couple of spin-off articles from that one. I went from a believer to an unbeliever in evolution, and death and life in the Bible. Those were actually drawn from that ebook. Another one is called Love in the Bible. There I discuss the errors that are rampant in the Christian community, particularly about agapeo and phileo. Is love an important subject for Christianity? You really need to read this one. One spin-off article from that one is called Why Agapeo Cannot mean the divine, unconditional love of God, and why phileo cannot mean brotherly love. There's another one that stands alone that's called Cherishing Jesus Christ and the Bible. These are very important works that you will benefit by exposing yourself to. Capital Punishment in the Bible is another ebook where I discuss the government's role in being able to execute individuals, and for what reasons and through what process in terms of legal process. I also identify when countries drop certain capital punishment offenses. You can gauge the liberalness of a particular government as you look at what they enforce and don't enforce, at least on that issue. But I also have a spin-off article that came from that actually turned into an ebook, because in addressing being able to kill human life, man killing another human life, the question of the preborn came up. So I have an ebook called Abortion: How and Why Abortion Resides in the Weakest Form of Human Thought and Valuation. This is one I really would like for you to look at, because I make the case that an atheistic evolutionist, godless evolutionist, is truly an adamant pro-lifer. And I destroy the abortion argument point by point before I even address the biblical material or bring God into the picture. The point is I demonstrate that humanism, which is the weakest form of human thought, is the only place abortion has a home. Atheistic evolution at least promises science as a system for values. The Bible, or theism, any kind of theism, has values that are set that come from above. Humanism is just human opinion of what ought to be right and wrong, and it is indeed the weakest form of human thought that exists, and that is the home of abortion. Having said that, I have some spin-off articles. Some are from the ebook, Embryonic Stem Cell Research, a Unique Declaration. What do we call it when same species consume another? Abortion, governing officials in the Bible, the abortion argument, the fertile egg, and the Bible. Another standalone article that goes with abortion is called The Stunning Civil Rights Parallels Between American Slavery and Abortion. In this, I demonstrate that humanism in itself can make a case for life, for the preborn. And I show that American slavery, same basic arguments that was used to dominate that people group, is now used to dominate the preborn human class. Turning to an article dedicated completely to Christians is one called the Stick Figure Gospel Presentation. I developed this over several years because I wanted a way where people could present the gospel but not be a canned presentation. But I wanted it where they wouldn't miss any points. So these stick figure representations of each part of the gospel assures that you don't miss any of the gospel, yet you can concentrate on one area more than the other if need be, according to the need of the moment. I have verses that you would memorize for the various panels, is what I call it, or stick figures, and then those are like arrows in your quiver. This particular article I've had up on Scribd, which is an article source, which I have almost all of my articles up there. But this has consistently been one of the top read articles. So I hope you'll avail yourself of that one. Turning now to just smaller articles, I have a couple on Christian salvation matters, central message of the Bible, and why a Roman crucifixion in the Bible. Why did Jesus have to die that way? Another 4-article series is called Breadth of Mind and the Bible. And I address that from 4 different angles, so it's 4 different articles. Because Christians have been accused forever of being narrow-minded, I make the case that a true thinking Christian has the greatest breadth of mind of any of the people on the planet. I have a 3-article series on the Bible itself. One is called Textual Criticism in the Bible, another is Translations in the Bible, and another is the 1611 Authorized King James Translation of the Bible and the Bible. That's a funny one. A lot of comments on these articles as well. I have a 3-series article on man's nature, which just discusses the human sin nature and what our condition is, as well as the nature of Jesus' temptations. We're told he was tempted in all points just as we, yet without sin. But he did not have a sin nature, so I discussed that whole. 3-article series on prayer. Here I discuss a foundation for prayer that's received by God, the content of that received prayer, and then the first received prayer, which I get into a lengthy discussion on metanoia, which means repent or repentance. Sometimes people have asked me to write certain articles. I had one fellow said, "Have you ever written anything like on personal happiness?" Well, okay. So I did write that. Turned out to be a lot of fun to write it. But I put it with another article, as far as how it's listed, called Vexed Daily in the Bible. So it's like 2 sides of the same coin, where a Christian, there's personal happiness, but there's vexation living in this age, and how that tension rests. I have several articles addressing church organization or just general church practice. One is called Ordination. One is called Boring Sermons in the Bible. Religious Frauds. The Necessity of Spiritual Independence. That's a great one. Local Church and Voluntary Association. And then I have another one, Open Church Membership versus Closed Church Membership. These are very practical and hit at the heart of some of the received Christian practices today that need to be evaluated. Of course, I have some articles on sex, and you'll find several there, whether it's just sex in the Bible, discussing the different marriage scenarios, and then other sexual deviations. You can read those. Some on general Christian living. One's called Forgiving Others in the Bible. There's another one I've received a lot of comments on. Common Man in the Bible, a Christian website in the Bible. Christians, the best thing you can do for your country. That's another short article. How much of the Bible can a person not believe and still be okay? And a bunch of others. Some general theological issues I address. One is called the royal priesthood in the Bible. Satan, fallen angels, us in the Bible. Missions in the Bible. I bet you didn't know you're a foreign missionary, did you? The end of the world in the Bible. That one I discussed the two main end scene scenarios. Where they agree, where they disagree, and why they disagree. I don't know how it's all going to work out, but I became familiar with the different belief systems, and that article is pretty educational on that. Why would a perfect God make imperfect beings? You've heard that all the time. Well, read that one. The voice of the flesh, the voice of demons, the voice of God in the Bible. The anger of God in the Bible. 13 reasons, 13 biblical reasons for calamity, disease, accidents, afflictions, mayhem in the Bible. Concerning evolution, I have several smaller articles on that as well. Not only death in the Bible, as an ebook do I address it, but one's called Logic, the Trinity, Naturalism, which is atheistic evolution, and the Bible. So I discuss logic and discuss it from the two angles, whether it's from God's viewpoint or from atheistic evolution. I had a lot of fun writing that article. Another is just called Atheism, the Atheist and the Bible, discussing atheism and what the Bible actually teaches about that. Evolution's first male and the Bible. This thing, parts of it are just hilarious. I also have one called Evolution and Homosexuality. I have more articles coming, more in the works. One I would really like to write, Lord willing, if I keep my wits about me and keep my health, will be called Microwave Christianity in the Bible. The point of that is, if you are going to learn from God, learn about God, it can't be in little just snippets. You're going to have to dedicate yourself to seeking Him. He says, you will seek me and you will find me when you search for me with your whole heart. I have no idea what that means if I'm seeking Him with my whole heart. All I can do is get before Him and say, help me to seek you with my whole heart, because the heart's deceitful above all things, desperately wicked. Who can know it? I have no idea if I'm meeting that qualification. But I do know this. It's not where you just can walk in, flip on a switch or a microwave, and get instant information from God to where you're going to grow and grow well. You must dedicate yourself to searching things out. My work here, I hope, will be of benefit to you in that, because I will challenge you to think about things and to wrestle with things, which is necessary. Faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things that are not seen. To be assured of something or to have conviction about something requires having wrestled through the material, know the arguments on both sides, or three sides or four sides, ferret out which ones are valid, which ones aren't, and then choosing what is the correct material. And then it's a conviction. Nobody's talked you into it, and nobody can talk you out of it. The problem with so many people is they say they believe things, but they don't have convictions about it because they just believe it for whatever reason, a microwave Christianity, but they haven't really wrestled through where they have convictions on things. So my hope is this website and these articles will be used by God, hopefully in your life, to assist in these matters to where you grow in the faith. One last article I want to write is why Christians quit growing and the Bible. And there are a lot of Christians who quit growing, and there's reasons for that. I don't want that to be you, and I don't want that to be me. God is infinite. This Bible, I have only scratched the surface of what is available. The knowledge of God is inexhaustible. The understanding He can give, the wisdom He can give is beyond measure. We can devote ourselves 100% to this task 100% of the time, and we will just be getting started. There is no reason for any Christian to become stale and to become lethargic or to become rote. So that's it. So there's a lot there, and I hope that you will take advantage of it. And like I always say, listen, learn, live. So why do I give all my work away? There's several reasons, but I want to read you a poem. It's really a prose poem on my website. It's entitled, "Freely I Give, because freely I have been given." On April 17, 1977, I became a Christian. In the ensuing days, weeks, months, and years, God has never charged me a penny for His knowledge, for His wisdom, for His understanding, or for His comfort, encouragement, guidance, hope, joy, promises, present actions, or ongoing pardon. He is not going to charge me a penny for eternal life, an immortal body, a place in an incorruptible new heavens and new earth, or for all the immeasurable riches He has decided to lavish upon me for all eternity. Anything that I know that has any true value has been freely given to me. There are many ways I am not like God. Very often I do not act like Him, react like Him, talk like Him, or think like Him. But this is one time I have decided to be like God. To me, He has freely given, so to you, I freely give. But do not mistake free with cheap. Do not assume this material is simple. Do not assume it is shallow. Do not be deceived into thinking it is naive or narrow in breadth. I will challenge you time and time again. I will measure you and expose your shallowness of thought and inconsistency of thought and your errors. I will change how you view some things, maybe how you view a lot of things. Things like love, death, money, things like abortion, evolution, sex, and government, just to name a few. If you are a mental adventurer, I will not disappoint you. I will make you think and rethink, assess and reassess, examine and re-examine, you will come away from my work different. So, now that you're here, come on in. The only cost is your time and energy of thought. I do not intend on wasting either. Another reason I give my work away, I've addressed in another part of my website. I said, look, each of my readers fall into one of three groups: a current brother or sister, a brother or sister to be, or a never to be redeemed individual, which I hope is zero after exposure to my work. Why would I want the money of any of them? Now that really does get down to it. You know, before I was a Christian, I always knew when I hit a Christian radio station, because within a minute they're asking for money. That has always really offended me, and it still does, this rush for your cash. So I want you to have your cash in your pocket, and then you work it out between you and God what He wants you to do with that. That's our responsibility and our privilege. And I honor that for all of my brothers and sisters, and I will promote that for all of my brothers and sisters. So that is the primary thing. For me, it is a great honor to be able to offer all this free of charge. The internet is a tremendous tool, and I'm greatly appreciative for it. I was born in 1953 in Wichita, Kansas, and though we attended church when I was young pretty regularly, in junior high the minister ran off with the piano player, and that pretty much ended any church going. In a funny way, that worked to my advantage, because when I was in my early 20s, to begin to search and go to churches, there wasn't a great barrier there, because church was not a problem for me. In those early teen years and then into my early 20s, I was involved in all kinds of stuff that I don't even want to get into here. But there was a point, I'd sold Bibles door to door for 2 summers, and it was a big joke because I would sell Bibles in the summer. That's how I was paying my way through college. And then I was selling beer as a bartender in the winter. So you can imagine what the whole thing was. But there was a point when I was living with a woman, and I moved to South Florida. And I was already playing the guitar and written quite a few original songs, so I was playing in some open mics and things like that. And when I moved from Kansas to South Florida, one thing that I couldn't understand was why there was more ability to be involved in the arts, and yet it was all a rush to the bottom. So I wrote one song that was just filthy, because the point of it was, look, if rushing to the bottom is what it's about, then let's just do it and get it out of the way and move on to something else. I couldn't understand why the arts were degenerating instead of developing Michelangelos and Beethovens or other people of great. It was just so much of it was just garbage. Well, I didn't understand what sin was. Anyway, as I began to search for meaning, and I may record some of the songs that I wrote pre-Christian, just to give you an idea of the kinds of questions and things I was looking for. But I decided, the 2 summers I sold the Bible, I knew some people, when I would put that book in their hands, especially this Nave's Topical Bible, they knew what they had in their hands. Others, I had to sell them that book. But there were some people I knew that they had a relationship. There was something about the Bible. And so when I began really questioning, I thought of, if people asked me what I thought about the book, say Moby Dick, I would have said, well, I could kind of know some things about it, I think, but I've never really read it. But if you asked me about the Bible, I had all kinds of views about it, but I had never really read it. So this girl I was living with, I told her, I said, I think I'd like to start reading the Bible. Well, she took a Gideon's Bible from the hospital where she worked, and so I started reading it. And it was a combination of, on one hand, it would be something that was very convicting, and I was arguing against these things. On the other hand, it would be something that was very enlightening. For example, I don't know why I read the book. I read the Revelation first, and then I went to the book of Job. And I'm reading the book of Job, and he says, "Man who is born of woman is of few days and full of trouble." And I said, good grief, that's my whole life in a couple of words. What else does this book have to say? So, on the other hand, it'd say things like, all fornicators were going to go into the lake of fire, which is the second death. And I said, well, what's a fornicator? I'll look it up, single people not married having sex. And I go, I'm living in fornication. But what's that? Marriage is just a piece of paper, so I'm arguing back and forth. Well, it was about 6 months of being in the Bible, just in it myself. And life circumstances that I finally got to a point where I was convinced the Bible was not from man, it was indeed from God. For various reasons, I was convinced of that. And I finally found a place. I started going to some churches, but it was like so disjointed, none of it made sense yet. And then I went to a Bible study place called the Greenhouse. And when you were a visitor there, first thing you did was go into the visitors class, which was a gospel presentation of how you get right with God. It was there the pieces fell together. I still fought for about 3 more days, but then in April of 1977, finally asked the Lord to come into my life, and I knew some changes were going to happen because I knew the sex thing had to end unless I married this girl I was with, and other things, and the Lord just did a lot of tremendous things delivering me through out of that time period. But the next year and a half then, see, I was almost 24, was just a lot of Bible study. I was going to Bible studies 3 times a week, and of course church, and then I was in the Bible myself, and I was working, so I mean I'd get home and it was just straight into the Bible itself. And after a year and a half, I wound up going to work at a place called Turning Point. It's a residential staff, was what I was, residential drug rehabilitation center in Pompano Beach, Florida. So I was there for about 2.5 years, teaching and doing whatever. At that point, when that closed up, I was a single guy all during this time. I wound up going to the Fort Lauderdale Beach Christian Center. What it was is a street gospel mission. A fellow named Jack Fontaine had done it 2 times previously. This was his 3rd time. He'd go out on the beach, and this was a 3-story hotel. It was renovated. And I came on staff there over what was called the family division. And that was a very intense year and a half time period. It was the most spiritual place I've ever been, was that street gospel mission. I could tell you story after story of both of those places, but particularly that street gospel mission. So at that point, when that closed, I was recruited to go to a Bible college. And I'd already been feeling like I was involved in pastoring type things, but it's like, what denomination am I anyway? Because even though I was going to, I'd go to a lot of different churches, but at Turning Point and the gospel mission, there were Christians from all kinds of groups that they had no idea what our needs were, and yet God would use them, and I became convinced that there were Christians in all of these different groups. But I wasn't committed to any denomination because I didn't really know what all they believed, what all the beliefs were, and all that. But when I felt this urge to pastor, I was like, well, what denomination am I? So I wound up looking into some different things. And in Southern Baptist, I thought, oh, I might be a Southern Baptist maybe. I don't know. I mean, they're kind of family-oriented and sort of a little bit rounder, not quite as rigid as some of the other groups I'd been around. So I went to Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. They had an Associated Divinity program, 62 hours, I believe, for guys 30 or over that didn't have a 4-year undergraduate. Now, before I'd become a Christian, I had gotten into my senior year of business administration, but my life was so chaotic, and none of it made sense. I just dropped it all. So I still had 3 full years, plus part of a 4th, but I never had my undergraduate completed. So I failed to mention that the Bible college where I was recruited to go, I would have needed to be there 2 years in order to get my undergraduate finished. It's called Whitworth Bible College in Brookhaven, Mississippi. But after 1 year of being there, the school closed. So it went down in flames, and it was really a bloodbath for me because that was my first introduction to the academic Christian world. But I did get my 1st year Greek there, and that was a tool that stood me well. But I bounced around for a while after that, and that's when I wound up going to Southwestern, the Associated Divinity program after that completed. So anyway, I went to this seminary and 2 years and got an associate in divinity. And during that time, a lot of these Baptist boys, they were listening to me, and one day we were sitting before class, and one of the guys said, "By the way, what are you anyway?" And I said, "Well, if you want to put a label on me, I call myself a conservative, evangelical, non-denominational brother in the Lord." And he said, "What do you mean by non-denominational?" And I said, "Well, I think there's Christians scattered in all these groups everywhere." And he said, "Well, you're not really non-denominational, you're interdenominational." And I said, "Oh, okay, so I'm a conservative, evangelical, interdenominational, non-denominational brother in the Lord." And we just all laughed. What that basically means, conservative means Bible-centered, that's authoritative. All the rest of this stuff, man may be able to do things, there's liberty to do things in some areas if you're not contradicting the Bible. But what is actually authoritative is the Bible, not all of these traditions that people might put on it, even though they may be okay to do some of those things. Evangelical means people need to hear the gospel, the good news of how to get right with God, that we're in trouble. Jesus Christ is the only way out of trouble. So you present that message that has to go forth. Conservative, evangelical, interdenominational, non-denominational, brother, all of that means we're all Christians who are brothers. We're just gifted differently. And we may have different maturity levels, so you might wind up as an elder, you might wind up as a deacon, different positions, but we're still just brothers in the Lord with different gifts, different maturity levels. That's it. And then, of course, brother in the Lord, being a Christian. Now, after that associate divinity, I wound up bouncing around a little bit. I'd gotten married by that point, and we wound up working in a children's home and had gotten involved in that. And that's where you live right there as house parents. And I wound up 3.5 years, actually it was a little more than that, but at a place called East Tennessee Christian Home. It was when I was there, and that was in Johnson City, or Elizabethton, Tennessee, next to Johnson City. I wound up checking into Milligan College, and I could take 1 year in that college and get my business administration degree, which I went ahead and did that. Also took my second year Greek there with Lee Magnus, and that was tremendous. And then I went over to Emmanuel School of Religion and transferred a bunch of the associate classes in. Many of them were Master of Divinity level classes. And so at Emmanuel School of Religion is where I got my Master in Divinity. That was a 90 semester hour program, and I think 45 hours came from my Southwestern time. So I had 45 hours to do at Emmanuel School of Religion. It was there that I also took a year there. You were required to take a year Hebrew and a master's thesis. So on my site you'll see one ebook, if you want to call it that, on offenses between Christians. And that's a pretty technical thing because it was for my Master of Divinity. Other than that, a lot of my work is just more colloquial, you might say. Not quite so academically rigid. I want to say this, the academics was a mixed bag. I'm glad that I have that for this reason. With all these articles I've written, where many are directed at the church and many are not, but the ones directed at the church, by having a Master of Divinity, people can't say, well, you're just jealous of all these guys that have these degrees and credentials and blah, blah, blah. To me, it's nice to have those credentials, not for the sake that it qualifies anybody for anything. That isn't, these degrees isn't how you grow in spiritual understanding. It's God who opens up hearts and minds and teaches us. So the academics was a mixed bag. Now some of the tools were very valuable, particularly the Greek has been the most valuable tool for me. But also biblical backgrounds and some of that. But a lot of it, I tell you, I fought a lot of it because it was just, stuff. And I also do not like the whole system, but that's discussion for another time. But during that time with the Master of Divinity, I was elected into an international honor society called International Society of Theta Phi. It's an academic honor society. And that's something you can't petition for. And what they did is look at your grades and what you've done, and also what you've done, and you would be nominated for it and elected to it. And that spoke very highly of Emmanuel School of Religion in that they were in the independent Christian church tradition, which I was not and am not. And so for an outsider to be given this kind of an honor showed some openness on their part. And so at that point then, after that, I did wind up pastoring. I was pastoring Knob Creek Church of the Brethren. I was there as a non-denominational pastor for 2.5 years, and then came to Trinity Christian Church, which is here in Bowling Green. That's how I wound up in Bowling Green. And that one blew up on me. But all this means basically is I had a total of 7+ years of residential ministry experience and a little over 3 years of pastoral experience. And then from 1998 on, actually that ended all in 94. So I had about 4 years of work in different jobs, but since 1998 I wound up at a place called Container World. I've been a sales guy ever since. And during that time from 98 until pretty much now, but even earlier on, that when I say I was struggling, it was just like, what am I here for? And I would wind up in these ministry situations where I always wound up on the short end of the stick for the most part. And in fact, I will tell you, as far as the most unfair treatment, if you want to call it that, not to make myself a victim, but it's been at the hands of professing Christians, even more than non-Christians. And so if any of you have experienced that, don't feel that you're alone. Well, I'm trying to determine how much have I brought on myself, how much not, a lot of soul searching, and I came away with a pretty clear conscience. I may have done a few things a little differently, but for the most part, when I needed to stand, I stood. And you just let the tree fall where it falls and take the repercussions for it. But from 98 to say 2010, somewhere in there, is when I did most of my writing. And a lot of the reason is because I had a lot of things in me that I needed to get out. So I just started writing. So that's when I started this website. And I also have wanted to get my songs recorded. I've got over 150 Christian songs and probably 30 or 40 non-Christian songs. And so I'm moving into the music area now. I think that's it.